as much as AI is great and wonderful, AI can also be incredibly harmful and negative when used improperly or in the hands of someone that wants to infiltrate your environment. So it is blind to the size of your organization. It is just trying to get information, right? Information could be your PII, your personal information.
Mhm.
It could be your bank account, as you said, right? It can be your kids' names, your mother's maiden name, so that it can hack into your accounts. So it doesn't care how big you are.
Welcome to Podcast Wise, Perspectives, Cybersecurity, and AI. In this episode, we sit down with Chaz Chalkley, the Vice President of Channel and Strategic Partnerships at Dataprise. With over 2 decades of experience in technical consulting and customer service, Chaz is a seasoned expert in fostering strategic partnerships that empower sales teams and drive revenue growth. Holding a bachelor's degree in integrated science and technology from James Madison University, Chaz is well versed in the complexities of AI deployment and cybersecurity. In this conversation, he shares insights on the critical role of training and technology adoption, the importance of comprehensive cybersecurity strategies, and the evolving landscape of AI and cybersecurity insurance. Please welcome Chaz Chalkley. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Hey, Chaz.
Hello, Tin.
How are you?
Great. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. All right. So let's do a little icebreaker. Beyond the technical execution of the new AI model, a leader's most critical role is managing the strategic fallout. Now, in your experience advising clients, what is the single most common misconception executive teams hold right now about AI security and what it truly means for their business?
That's a really good question. A lot of the executives and boards just hear the term AI and want to make sure that their company is using it somehow, right? They're out on the golf course, they're out in their executive peer meetings, and they hear this, and they don't often understand the complexity that is inclusive as part of an AI deployment, or the maintenance that it takes to ensure that AI is gated, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we often see trialing out in public AI forums where you're at risk of your data being, a loss of intellectual property because your data goes out into the public forum, as opposed to doing so in a closed loop AI system like a private co-pilot deployment, things like that. So that's some of the most concerning aspects of that. And I think the general term is called shadow AI, right? Where so many of their staff or even themselves are using AI in the public space, like a Gemini or a ChatGPT, that is not gate kept. And that's the biggest concern that we have for organizations that are going through that could cause the most fallout if any of that information somehow gets compromised or leaked into areas where they don't want it to be.
Yeah. I see a lot of more fear missing out, right? The FOMO,
That's
where
right.
it's something like, yeah, my executive friend they have this new AI thing and I want to jump on this thing, but not knowing the consequences that can happen to their
Hmm.
own business, right? So
Hmm.
it's like getting the new car that you like jumping on the new bandwagon, basically, and
Yeah.
not understanding the consequences of things. So with AI implementation expanding an enterprise attack surface, not just from the model itself, but from its data pipeline and the ecosystem. For a CISO, what would be the top 3 non-negotiable security controls that must be in place before an AI system moves from pilot to production?
I think the first is training. With any cybersecurity deployment, everything that we hear from CISOs and things that we experience ourselves internally, right?
Mhm.
Your weakest point is always going to be that human firewall, we call it. So training the staff that's going to be utilizing the AI implementation, and even those that aren't, because some way or another, all of your staff is going to be utilizing AI, whether it's done in a public AI forum or within your own closed loop system. Training the staff is always paramount. So I think that's the number one priority, is making sure that there's a budget for this project, and on an ongoing time frame that training is part of that.
Yeah. So do you think, I'm sorry, just to jump on the training thing. So we have that cybersecurity awareness training. So do you
Mhm.
think that it would be wise to add AI awareness training coupled together or separate?
Well, they're often one and the same, right?
Hmm.
It's part of your cybersecurity strategy. So the CIO and the CISO, or the CTO and the CISO, should be working hand in hand if they're not the same person, right? To show how AI impacts cybersecurity and vice versa. So I do think it needs to be done together, in that there should always be continuous cybersecurity training, phishing awareness, that sort of thing, as well as AI best practices, best use cases, because using it improperly becomes a security concern.
Yep, totally agree with that. So now, what would be the other two non-negotiable security controls that you would add before moving from pilot to production?
So it would probably be some sort of like a framework gap assessment, right?
Hmm.
Making sure that you understand what compliances, what regulations your company is beholden to, doing an audit and assessment to make sure that those gaps are not present, and then taking that into consideration as you deploy an AI solution, right? So you want to have identity access management or privilege access management, so that AI is not taking in data that it shouldn't, or people aren't accessing data that they shouldn't. So following those strict framework guidelines, coming up with a playbook and a rule book for your staff, that would be another non-negotiable that we're hearing from CISOs, and what we'd recommend.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because you would need, like you said, the playbook, knowing what to do, right? When something happens,
Mhm.
it's much better than spitballing, right? Like when it happens, it's kind of
Right.
it's hard to think when you're in the middle of a threat and in an emergency. You're like, what am I supposed to be doing? I forget some steps and then create a whole other incident, which is not so fun.
Correct. And not all of the information within your organization has to go into that LLM model, right? So it can be a smaller portion, so that you're maintaining that compliance. So yeah, that's a big one that we hear.
Okay. So now we often discuss data leakage, but let's
Hmm.
talk about data integrity.
Okay.
How should executive leadership practically measure and mitigate the business risk of data poisoning or adversarial attacks designed to subtly corrupt an AI model's output, especially in high stake fields like healthcare and finance?
Yeah. So making sure that the attack vector is covered, right? So making sure that, or the attack landscape, I guess. So you have a solid MDR, EDR solution in place that's encompassing your entire environment, right? I mentioned EDR, but really that's not good enough when you're talking about AI, because you really need someone looking at the entire infrastructure, both on premise and with the endpoints, but also all of your data that's in the cloud. Taking Copilot, for instance, right? All of that information is going to be pulling from your data that's in Azure, in 365, in M365, and other resources that are in the cloud. So you need a broader coverage of cybersecurity, a proactive cybersecurity, to make sure that it's not just the endpoints, but it's your entire infrastructure, and you're monitoring what's coming in and out at the edge of your networks, and from the people, right? From those end users. I mentioned that the human firewall aspect of it. So endpoint is still very critical, but adding in monitoring and management for your entire environment is so crucial, because oftentimes, you mentioned data poisoning, right? That's a real thing. We're seeing it happening, where they're getting in, they're corrupting the data in a large language model, in a data lake, that is creating more of the, I guess, hallucinogens that you're hearing, right?
Hmm.
So making sure that you're monitoring that entire IT environment, not just the endpoints.
Yeah, so the whole stack. It's not just the top tier or the bottom tier, the whole thing, right?
Correct. And you have no idea what is going down in your supply chain as well. So it's not just making sure that you have a cybersecurity practice around your own data, but your third party vendors, who are interacting with your users, your data, your product. What
Mhm.
cybersecurity do they have in place?
Yeah.
And are they protecting their environments that may contain some of your data, or some of your customers' data, even worse?
Yeah, and also APIs, right? And
Mhm.
APIs is like when everything is connected through APIs. And let's say that you have a third vendor that you're connecting into your own thing, like let's say Salesforce, right? You have your CRMs. What happens when they are being hacked? What's happening to the data that you have inside the Salesforce? Is that something that's being compromised? How do they take care of that? What is your risk there? Like all of those things needs to be thought out also.
Yeah, and not just in those resources, but in transit to those resources and from those resources. So ensuring that everything is encrypted, that's all part of that cybersecurity strategy.
Yep, totally agree. Now, let's talk about AI risk and ethics. And the AI risk isn't just about breaches, right? It's about bias, fairness, and compliance. With emerging regulations like the EU AI Act, where does the CISO responsibility end and the chief compliance or ethics officer begin in the securing responsible AI?
And adding in HR to that as well, right? That's a great question. And I certainly won't pretend to be an expert on each of those particular roles. I just play one on TV, right? So I think, you're seeing instances of nurses taking pictures of patients and that data going out into the public forum. That may not necessarily be an AI thing, but it can certainly be corrupted and manipulated by AI. But that is certainly in the healthcare space, right? A privacy concern. That's a violation. So the vCISO is responsible for making sure that the strategy to lock down those devices to prevent corporate data moving into public spaces to prevent that from happening. The compliance officer, that's a great question. That comes down to training. That comes down to, we mentioned earlier, the compliance assessments, the framework gap assessments, making sure that the company is meeting the standards that their company is expected to be beholden to, right, or maintain. Man, I'm having trouble answering that one because that's a pretty complex question, and I certainly don't want to pretend to, like I said, be that expert on either side. But the CISO's responsibility is to make sure that the technology is there and in place. The compliance officer making sure, in coordination with HR and staff management, that the policies are being enforced and protected.
Yeah. So I know there's a thing going viral right now where there was a lady that was doing the day of in the life of, so her job was basically a Mac makeup artist at one of the airports. So she would tell you like, well, this is the day of my life where, I get up and I go through the airport, and this is what I do. I have to badge in and walk through TSA, and then this is how much money at the end of the day that we make. So, and then this is how I go to the bank and I deposit. So she did the whole thing, the whole day, how she went from A to Z, deposits to how she locks the doors, how she opens the doors, all of these security things. And she did not understand that it was something quite dangerous that she showed on TikTok, right? And she got fired, and she was very upset from being fired. But I don't think because she was a makeup artist and she did not understand the security implications that was going through, she was so upset.
Yeah.
She was really upset. But the first time I saw it, I was like, what is she doing? Like, because this is not something that you should put up. Like, this is something that I believe is also a lack of training, right? To tell your employees, hey, this is not something that you want to put online, how you do all these things. You can say, hey, like, this is how I put makeup on this lady, or something mundane where it's still a little bit interesting, but not every step of your day. Like, this is a little ridiculous. It's a little bit too much, in my opinion. But it was quite scary because she's not the first one.
Oh,
It's just,
no.
it's a little.
And you have to do it on a recurring basis too, right? Because what is it? You have to say something 7 times for someone to have it really sink in, or at least that's what it seems like with my kids. So you want to repeat those trainings, but I mean, wow, that is unfortunate, and the training has to go to every level. It's not just your IT people. In fact, it is probably more so not the IT people that need to go through that training. But that one is such a shocking instance. I mean, even someone knowing your schedule,
Yeah.
right? And when you're not at your home, like that's a pretty scary instance. And sometimes you just have to highlight those things for those that don't necessarily think about that aspect of it. So agree with you. Training is so important in that regard.
Yeah, totally agree. So let's jump on to cyber insurance and underwriting and
Mhm.
AI's due diligence. So in cyber insurance, carriers are raising the bar for coverage. What specific demonstrable i.e. AI security practices or certifications are underwriters beginning to mandate? And what is the cost of non-compliance for high-risk enterprise?
Great question. I don't know some of the AI compliance mandates that they have, but I can tell you some of the best practices around cybersecurity
Mhm.
and the trends that are going that have been going on within the cybersecurity insurance space. 4 years ago it was MFA, right? Cybersecurity insurance wanted to make sure that you had multi-factor authentication.
Mhm.
And then 2 or 3 years ago, you started seeing more intelligence in the community enforcing some level of endpoint detection and response, where the endpoints are protected, where the users are interacting with the data, and not just antivirus, right? But a proper endpoint detection and response that includes some sort of SOAR, security orchestration and automated response, to contain any potential incident or data loss. And now you're seeing the broader IT landscape coverage mandate, right? Where you have to have your entire supply chain covered, your data that's in the cloud, your SaaS solutions, your servers, your infrastructure, your Microsoft 365 environment, your AWS environment, your Google Cloud, Oracle, et cetera. You're seeing all of that. And what we're also seeing is cybersecurity being paired frequently with a BCDR strategy, a business continuity disaster recovery strategy.
Mhm.
So you're seeing more organizations mandate a DRAS solution, disaster recovery as a service solution, or some sort of disaster recovery plan internally, so that you're minimizing the impact of a downtime. And those backup strategies are also required to have some level of immutability, right? Where the backup data can't be impacted by, or is less likely to be impacted by, a cybersecurity event, so that you can restore. So when a cyber insurance company is looking at an organization, assessing an organization, if you have a proper cybersecurity solution, let's call it an MDR solution, right? Managed detection and response, that includes a SOC, a security operations center, that includes protection at the endpoints and protection across your IT environment. When a cybersecurity company sees that you have that in place and it's configured properly, and they see that you have a backup and disaster recovery strategy in place, you are a much more attractive company to insure.
Mm.
So you're going to see higher coverage, lower premiums, that sort of thing. The same can apply to AI and cybersecurity, and making sure that you have attestations for framework assessments, right? That you've gone through and are compliant within any regulatory compliance that you're beholden to, and that you have the backups of your data in case any of those are impacted. So I see that impacting AI more and more. But honestly, I think it's a topic we all need to educate ourselves on a little bit more, is finding out where the cybersecurity insurance companies are going to mandate protections within the AI space. And I mean, it's more than just cybersecurity insurance, right? It's going to encompass all of business insurance as well, because of the impact that AI can have on an organization. So yeah, that's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, totally. And so tell me, why would a company get cyber insurance?
Right now, it's to cover against a cybersecurity incident
Hmm.
that may occur.
Hmm.
What we're finding is that often business insurance, right, business liability insurance, or an umbrella type of coverage, doesn't necessarily include results that happen from a cybersecurity incident, right? The
Mm.
damage that can happen from there. And that damage can be widespread, right? It's not just the impact to your IT environment and the loss of productivity. That's also the reputation damage that occurs from a cybersecurity incident. So cybersecurity insurance can cover all of those things, whereas business insurance may cover you against, like a force majeure event, like a hurricane or some sort of other disaster. Cybersecurity insurance protects against those very specific incidents that come in from a cybersecurity threat. I'll give you a good instance of something that happened recently. We heard of an organization that there was an incident, a threat that came in through one of the end users' cell phones, right? But because they opened up on their phone like a phishing link, and because there was no MDM policy in place to secure those endpoints, their business insurance didn't cover it and their cybersecurity insurance didn't cover it
Ooh.
because a best practice was not deployed, meaning MDM, mobile device management, was not deployed to secure the mobile endpoints. So a cybersecurity insurance policy is going to go through an audit and it's going to give you the areas that need to be protected or the things that need to be implemented to make sure that you can be an insured company with cybersecurity insurance.
Mhm.
So we go through a lot of those audits ourselves at Dataprise, where we're working with a cybersecurity insurance company, checking the controls that they have to meet a certain policy coverage that is requested by the customer, and then helping them implement those best practices. So they're often best practices. It's not even making sure you're Fort Knox, right? It's not making sure that you're the most secure company in the world. Right now, it's just going through a lot of the best practices, which include those things we mentioned before: MFA, backup and DRAS, endpoint detection and response, and then some sort of SOC overseeing your entire environment.
Okay. Now, what industry do you see most getting cyber insurance?
Lots in the healthcare space,
Mhm.
and then lots in the financial space. Credit unions, banks, financial advisory firms. That's where we're seeing it. We're starting to see it more in construction and manufacturing as well.
Okay.
As you see, I mean, this is an old incident, like a target being impacted by, I think it was the HVAC system that they came in through. So you see a lot of manufacturing construction zones that have a ton of IoT or OT, operation technology, and other devices that are not necessarily part of your traditional IT network, like a computer, a printer, an access point. You see all this other technology that can become access points for threat actors. We're seeing more in the construction, industrial, manufacturing vertical as well.
Interesting. So you've spoken about cybersecurity and disaster recovery as the peanut butter and jelly of the business resiliency.
Yes.
How does that analogy specifically extend to AI? What does the disaster recovery for compromised or misbehaving AI model actually look like? And how is it covered by insurance?
Great question. I think the important overarching theme there is ensuring that you have a backup and an exhaustive backup policy in place, right?
Mhm.
And that backup is tested regularly. Additionally, making sure that you have multiple copies of that backup and at least one of those copies being offsite and immutable, right? Inaccessible to your live network. That is going to help make sure that the data you have is actually protected, because what you're seeing is your backup locations are also being impacted by cybersecurity incidents. So making sure that those LLMs, the data sources that AI is pulling from, are backed up so that you can restore in the event there is a cyber incident or an action to corrupt your AI data, the data that your AI is pulling from.
Mhm.
That's where that all comes into play.
And also make sure you test your backup.
That should be part of any BCDR strategy, is at a minimum an annual test restore, right? To make sure that you can access your data with the appropriate RTO, RPOs, recovery time objectives, recovery point objectives,
Mhm.
so that you have access to that data in the time frame that is appropriate for your company's need to stay operational.
Yeah, I remember at my old job where the backup took over 24 hours to back up.
Okay.
So it never really backed up everything, right? So that was interesting to see when we had to test the backup to recover it, and it never worked out. And then we're like, why is it not working out? And we scratched our head, but we figured it out that it was because it lasted longer than 24 hours to do the backup.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
There are SLAs now for recovery points that are within 15 minutes, which are crazy, even for things stored out into the cloud, into a data center, or like a Veeam data vault, something like that. So it's fascinating that you have this near real-time data protection capabilities. Now, they certainly cost a lot more,
Yeah.
but if that is what the company mandates, then it's possible. So it is crazy, but testing it and finding out how quick it is to restore and making sure that it's not taking a full day, or
Yeah.
we've seen even longer to back up data.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that wasn't backup on a cloud or anything. It was like tapes.
Yes. Oh, the old DAT drives or LTOs. Yes, I remember those days.
Yeah. So I date myself a little bit. But no, not to worry.
I understand.
So, for the future of cyber liability, looking ahead of 24 months, what is the single greatest shift you anticipate in how cyber insurance policies will address AI related incidents? Do you see that it will be mandatory for AI specific writers or a new category of exclusions itself?
That's a great question. And I should know more of this coming off the heels of some of the events that I've been to, especially a net diligence event that I was recently at in Philadelphia, and our partnerships with breach coaches, law firms, and cybersecurity insurance firms. So that's a good question I'm going to have to dig into a little bit more. But about the direction of cybersecurity insurance and where that's going, I have to assume that AI is still going to be a part of cybersecurity, right? And there's still going to be that. But as I mentioned earlier, there's so many implications that fall outside of cybersecurity that AI can impact, right? Even if there isn't an event, there are still hallucinations or misconfigurations that are going to cause a business impact by the use of AI.
Right.
And that may fall into its own new branch of cybersecurity insurance. Sorry. So maybe there is a separate AI insurance, like there is a separate cybersecurity insurance. I do think that cybersecurity insurance is always going to play a role in AI because it's part of your infrastructure, it's part of your business, and it has to be protected with cybersecurity. But there are situations that are going to be caused by other items that have nothing to do with cybersecurity or an incident. So I think there may be a new branch of insurance, if not already, that specifically focuses on AI coverage.
Mhm. Now, so I like to say that cybersecurity, in the analogy of the house, that the house and the people inside is the business,
Hmm.
right? And then the locks, the windows, the cameras is the cybersecurity
Hmm.
outside. So can we say that AI is like the decorations on a house?
Ooh, I don't know. That's a pretty cool analogy. I mean, I've heard the cybersecurity in the house analogy, but in terms of what AI is, great question. I don't know. Maybe AI at this point would be something more akin to the utilities that we use, right? The
Okay.
internet, the electricity, the HVAC systems, the things that are powering us and to live more comfortably, to do things more easily. Maybe that would be more. So I mean, if that's accessories, then yeah, that would apply.
Yeah. It really depends on how you use AI, really. Because
Yeah.
if you use AI for generating content on for social media, it might be decorations,
Hmm.
right? But if
Yeah.
you're using it to analyze your data, um, that's more HVAC system and make it more comfortable because it's more efficiency,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Professionally, I think it's much more of that utility side because um, in some cases it already is, and in other cases it's going to be part of our daily lives,
Hmm.
right? And something we interact with and use to make our lives more convenient. And I would certainly consider those the utilities, especially HVAC, running water, those things that have evolved us from 100, 200 years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree. And might need to make a post about that. All right, so let's go a little more personal.
Okay.
With a career that spans deep into technology, from technical engineering to blah, 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 strategic partnerships,
Yeah.
you've seen the full life cycle of IT evolutions. What is one fundamental truth about technology adoption and change management that you've learned early on that still guides you in your decision making today?
I think it goes back to one of your first questions about what's a non-negotiable, and I'll carry it over to this conversation, and it's training. You can have the coolest widget, the coolest technology in your environment, but because you haven't provided use cases, case studies, you haven't provided the training, both in how to use it and in how to use it safely, right? To make sure that the technology is not abused or um, used carelessly. I always go back to training. So whenever you're implementing a new technology, be it a product or like a virtual service, training your staff, training everyone on how to use that and why it's important to the organization or why it's important to them. That's the biggest thing I've learned. I try and point everything back to communication. So talking about things, training things, that's what I do right now. Basically all I do is train on either what Dataprise can do or things like this where we're talking about general technologies. Talking about things and training is so important to make sure that adoption of the product goes as wide as possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, even having a cybersecurity awareness month is good because not only for businesses, but also for personal, right? Because I believe that you are at risk. Everybody's at risk because you have a bank account and because you have personal information that you don't want leaked, and all of those things that, you have a phone, and regardless if you click on something that is personal or business, you're at risk. Because I had a client the other day that was like, "Oh, I'm too small. I'm only 15 users. You know, I don't think I need anything for cybersecurity." And I'm like, okay, I get it. I understand, because you are doing what you do and you do it, you're the best at it. And I respect that. I totally do. But do you have a bank account for your business? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, you're vulnerable. I'm sorry to say, but you are vulnerable. He's like, okay, let's make a call. Let's get a meeting on the books, right? So I'm like, just because you have 15 users doesn't mean that you're not at risk. Everybody's at risk. If you have a bank account, you're at risk.
Yeah, I mean, often people think that threat actors are individuals going after the whale of an organization that could result in the biggest bang for their buck. But right now, a lot of activity is done by bots, right? And as much as AI is great and wonderful, AI can also be incredibly harmful and negative when used improperly or in the hands of someone that wants to infiltrate your environment. So it is blind to the size of your organization. It is just trying to get information, right? Information could be your PII, your personal information. It could be your bank account, as you said, right? It can be your kids' names, your mother's maiden name, so that it can hack into your accounts. So it doesn't care how big you are. Obviously, there are still those that are only going after those larger organizations. And frankly, if someone wants to get into your environment, they're going to get into your environment regardless of how much you spend on cybersecurity.
Yeah.
It's about catching it early, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't care how big you are. It doesn't care what industry you're in. If there's an opportunity to make money, either directly off of your banking account or by stealing information and using that information against you or to sell on the dark web, that's what it's going to go after. It doesn't care how big of an organization you are.
Yeah. And what was I going to say? It's the thing that I say also, it's like you said, the training, right? Like when you're in a small business, you don't often think about your cybersecurity. Why would you? Right? You think about what you do best, of whatever industry you're in. You think about that. You're not thinking about, hey, you know what? I might get hacked tomorrow. Like it's not something you're thinking about. You're just like, oh yeah, I need to go and pay my bills. I need to.
Yeah. How do I survive to the next day?
Right, exactly. So it's not something about, cybersecurity. Let's see here.
Yeah.
They're not sitting and thinking about that kind of stuff. All right. So you have given your focus to strategic partnerships and growth. What is a non-business book, hobby, or personal practice that you rely on to refresh your thinking and maintaining foresight in such a rapidly evolving industry?
Boy. Well, for just general mental health, I think it's exercise. We can get so caught up in the day-to-day that we forget to take care of ourselves. So be it mentally or physically, taking a break, going for a walk, going to the gym, going for a run, something like that I've found is very important to me no matter how much I have on my plate. I find that when I come back to that, I am refreshed, I am more efficient, I'm able to tackle things more quickly. The other thing is, again, it goes back to training, is never assume, right? Never assume that someone knows as much as I do about a particular topic, or just because I am immersed in conversations with cybersecurity experts as I try to learn things, like talking to you and Kelvin, right? And trying to find out more about other general technology. I'm always learning new things. And you have to remember that a business owner is not a cybersecurity expert, right?
Mhm.
Even a CIO is not a cybersecurity expert. In some cases, a CISO is not a cybersecurity expert. So they may not have the exposure to all of the information that we in a partnerships community where we're talking to so many different industries, so many different positions, and dealing with so many different technologies. We're unique in the fact that we have exposure to all those things. So coming at it with a humble approach, assuming that people don't know everything, and asking questions,
Mhm.
finding out what they do know, finding out what they're interested in, and how to cater your conversation to those two things, right? What they do or don't know, and what they're interested in. Really, in and outside of business, that's a good just personal thing.
Yeah.
I find that to help a lot. It's just remembering to not assume that that everyone's an expert, not assume that everyone is in your head and knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because I remember one time where I was talking to one of my friends and she's like, I fixed her computer and she's like, man, you're so great. You're doing this, like you can fix my computer. I'm so not so smart about this, and all that. And I'm like, girl, you're good at what you do. I'm good at what I
Correct.
do, right?
Yes.
You can raise millions of dollars for the company, and I cannot do that. I
Right.
can fix your computer. That's about it. For you, I can fix your computer. And she's like, yeah, that's true. I'm like, yeah, if you can raise millions, when I say millions, millions of dollars for the company,
Yeah.
you're doing a great job. So
Right.
worry about what you do best and not what you cannot do. Right. So she's like, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I do not have any more questions for you, sir. So I thank you so much for joining me today. It was a great conversation. I learned a whole lot about AI and cybersecurity insurance and a whole host of other things. So thank you so much for your time, Chaz.
Thank you,
And
Tin. I have some homework for myself too. There's some questions that you asked that got my brain going. I really want to talk to, especially on the cybersecurity insurance side and how it impacts AI and potential AI insurance. Those are things that I want to start researching when we're done here.
well, let's have a different podcast on this and then
That's right.
go from there.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you, audience, for watching. I'll see you guys next time.
Thank
Bye.
you.